Cool. Kristopher Roe, how are you doing today?
Doing really good. Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So you have an awesome band, and it's a band that I'm very familiar with, kind of from back in the day, because you guys had a pretty long break. You got a new song out, the Car Song. You've got a 7-inch single with that, a new music video, UK, Europe, and USA touring coming up starting in May 24th. A lot going on. You're a busy guy. How are you doing these days?
Dude, yeah, doing really good. In a really great place. It's been like a real creative streak lately, and I'm really grateful for it. I guess we take it when we get it. And I was always writing during our kind of like time off as it appears on paper, but just sometimes even though, you're a musician that's kind of like out there in the public, you also try to find balance at home. And, I was in a long kind of several year relationship and lost my father and, went through the things that we all go through. And I think some of those things can make you feel creative and some of them can make you feel like you have writer's block. And had a little bit of both, but I'm glad to feel like I'm in a really amazing, positive place in life right now. I've just recorded like 30 songs, and there will be about 14 of those will go on a new album, which I'm about 75% done with. So yeah, super excited. And of course, yeah, the new single just came out, and that will eventually lead up to a new album. But yeah, it's been a great time lately. I'm really happy.
Yeah, and it's great to recharge because you guys, when you're first really I know you had several albums, but one of the first really big hit albums is 1996, and you had several songs from that album. Boys of Summer is one that
Oh
many
no,
people are. I'm sorry, but
that was 2003. 96 was our first album. Yeah, nobody knew
ah,
the album 96. Nobody bought it. 2003.
okay.
Yes, so long the story of the album you're talking about. Yes,
Oh,
sure.
no worries. I'm sorry. Yeah. So
No
long
problem.
a story was that album that had kind of really made you aware to many people, and you had one of the big hits was Boys of Summer, which was a cover, which
Yes.
is actually one of the songs I've always loved. Uh,
Me too.
tell me about that when you guys started hitting on that album. Was that like an overnight thing, or you'd have probably been touring before that? And
Oh yeah, no, we said like we have three independent albums before that on the band the Vandals had a label called Kung Fu Records, which is now defunct. But the album we had the album Anywhere But Here, which was our first album, which it was just kind of like 96. Nobody knew it. And then Blue Skies, Broken Hearts, Next 12 Exits. That was the album I think that put like the kind of indie and punk world just knowing our band. And then we did one EP on Fat Records called Look Forward to Failure. And then End Is Forever was our final record on an independent label. And then we did Soul Astoria. And like End Is Forever and Blue Skies, like those kind of did like really, really great for an independent label. I think they did almost like 500,000 copies on an indie label. And we just knew at that point, like, okay, we've been out touring, getting in the van for years and really just kind of bringing the music out to the people, but we could really do all we could with that. We needed a label behind us that could bring the music to a wider audience that couldn't find it in like an independent record store at the time, because this was all pre-streaming and things. So
yeah, pre
uh,
social media.
yeah,
Yeah,
pre-social media even. Yeah, I mean, I
yeah.
thinking back to tours where we had to just use a Rand McNally map and ask people for directions. It was
Exactly.
wild. But
The
yeah, we're so
Thomas guide.
oh totally Thomas guy. Yeah, and there's been times we would just like roll down the window and be like, I remember being in Quebec City and we just like the signs are in French. We're like, where is the venue? And it was in a big old IKEA that had been hollowed out, and they had like a 3,000 person punk rock show in there with us and Lagwagon and I think a couple other bands, No Use for a Name, and we couldn't find it. We were looking around and we asked some guy. I remember we rolled on the window and I'm like, "Can you tell us where this is?" And he's kind of aloof and he goes, "Don't mind me. I'm just a little stoned." I remember that so vividly. Just an
It's like
80-year-old man.
it's like a scene from Spinal Tap, right?
Yeah, but nonetheless, the album you asked about, when that first kind of started going to Sony, going to Columbia Records. Our friend, my good friend, Glenn Phillips, who was in the band, the alternative band from the '90s, Toad the Wet Sprocket, he told me that their deal on that label was a really artist structured deal that gave them complete control of everything. So we had like a lot of labels that wanted to sign a band, but I kind of went with a really modest deal at Columbia because it gave me complete control and I can continue doing what we did, but just let them build on it. So we did one single off that album, the song called In This Diary, which did quite well. And then we did Boys of Summer, which that wasn't even intended to be a single. Kind of, we were filming a video for another song. It was kind of an important song to us because it was about a girl who'd battled, she's been in and out of the hospital. She'd been battling like an eating disorder. And I thought I could write a song that was ambiguous enough to where people could relate to that sort of like, don't give up on life. We all go through these things kind of thing, but also write it in a way where it was personal enough to where this person would know I'm writing about them. They were a stranger, and I wrote like a line for line response of the letter they wrote to our fan mail. And so we were filming a video for that. And I remember we were playing the big radio festival in Los Angeles, the K-Rock Weenie Roast. And our A&R guy came backstage and goes, "Congratulations, buddies. Boys of Summer just became a new single." I go, "Wait, you're like, huh?" That? It was really weird. Because as like a kid who grew up in like this kind of DIY mentality, and we were always doing everything ourselves, I didn't think that, that was the first time I remember it kind of going off the rails to a point where it was no longer my choice. But I soon realized, like at a certain point when your band gets a certain level, you just kind of got to roll with the moving train, and you just got to be along for the ride. And it was an amazing song. It was, a lot of people don't even know, like Tom Petty's guitar player, Mike Campbell, wrote the music, and Henley, I believe it was a co-write with them. So I'm assuming he wrote the guitars and stuff. But yeah, it was great. And there was a deeper reason I chose to cover that. And when I was a kid, my mom, dad, and I would always go down to Florida to visit his parents every summer. And my mom and dad split up when I was 5 because my dad battled alcoholism. And during those, then they later got remarried when I was 10. So during those 5 years, my parents were separated. It was a difficult time. My mom and I, we were in and out of shelters and Section 8 housing. And it was just, she did her best to provide, and she did an amazing job. But what happened was, I remember her reaching out to my dad's parents. We didn't really talk to them anymore, and with the separation. And she's like, Chris is missing his father. He's missing this kind of familiarity that we used to do this summer vacation down there. Can you fly him down, just so we can have a little bit of some familiarity of what he remembered? And she did. My mom, pre 9/11, my mom saw me to the gate, put me on the plane as an unaccompanied minor, and my grandparents met me at the gate, and that was that. So I remember being down there in their little trailer in a trailer park in Largo, Florida. And unfortunately, it rained all the 2 weeks I was there. We didn't get to go to the theme parks and do the things you want to do as a kid. So my grandmother, being the amazing woman she was, she's like, "I'm going to take you out to the local department store. You can pick out one record you can listen to on our big wooden massive piece of furniture turntable they had in the trailer."
And those things sounded awesome too.
Yeah, they were great. It was in every grandmother had one of those, right?
Exactly.
But so anyway, she took me out. I bought that record. I remember taping Boys of Summer off of the top 40 on the radio on my little Jambox cassette recorder, and I listened to it all that couple weeks I was there. So fast forward 2002, I'm writing the new album, So Long Astoria, and she passes away. And I just remember I was wanting to cover this Crowded House song, "Don't Dream It's Over," but it had been a hit with another artist that year. And I said, you know what? I want to cover Boys of Summer. It's such a great, beautiful, melancholy, there's just this air of sadness in it, but it's also just such an anthem. And I don't remember if I demoed it or not, but I do recall showing it to the guys in the band, but they didn't know it. The way the Ataris works is I record all the songs in the studio, show them to a drummer plays what I write, and then I show the band. So recorded it, and then so now we're backstage at the K-Rock Weenie Roast. They're like, "Congratulations, buddies, this became your new single. Are you guys gonna play it today?" I'm like, they don't know the song. So I literally had to show them the song in 5 minutes time as best as I could, and then we went on stage and played it in front of, I think, 15,000 people.
Yeah, because that's a huge show. K-Rock, for people don't know, is very influential.
Very, very big. One of the biggest alternative stations in the country. They've always been good to us, but man, it was frightening because I wanted it to sound good. I think we did it passable, but and then of course, that was the moment that kind of kicked it all off. But I'm grateful for it. Now, I love the song. We play it every show. And to me, I just want to bring some happiness to people's lives in some small way. And I want them to be able to sing along with the songs they know. And that's for me, for me, it's my duty, and the thing that I enjoy the most is seeing people be happy,
Yeah, and sometimes the universe gives us gifts, right? We can't really anticipate.
100%, you nailed it. That's what I look at it as. The older I've got, the more I realize it's the trajectory your life goes on, you can never control it. You can try as best as you want, but sometimes it's better to just kind of relinquish that and focus on the things we can control rather than the things that we can't.
So tell me about the new single "Car Song." How did you write that? The video is really fun too, I should say,
Thank you.
that's they're both out there and rocking it in the world. Tell me about that
Well,
song.
Car Song came about as a kind of, well, it's a tribute to my father, but there's only one verse written like kind of not about him, but about his factory. He worked in an automobile factory at General Motors in my town, Anderson, Indiana. It was the biggest automobile plant outside of Detroit, and so until the 90s when it's all boarded up. So the imagery in that verse, it says, "The winter sky is weeping, the factories lie in their graves, like Cold War artifacts marching in some ghost parade." And that's kind of like a nod to the very dystopian Cold War vibes of a lot of small town America, like the same imagery you see in like a Springsteen or a Billy Joel song, or that kind of imagery was what I grew up with. And everything's boarded up, and it's still my home. It's still where I grew up. But yeah, it's sad to see. So that imagery, coupled with the fact that I wanted to write a song about the first new car I ever bought. My first car, I think my parents gave me for when I was 15, when I got my first job. And then I had tour vans, and then I was like, you know what? I need an actual car. I was living in a big city, and I didn't want to drive my van around. So I bought the most boring car, a 2003 Dodge Neon. And that was my car I drove everywhere to shows. And so this song, I wanted to write it in a way where it sounded like I'm talking about a girl or a person that I have feelings for or something. But it's really just about all the memories and travels and, just encapsulating this kind of wanderlust I had in this car and everything that kind of happened in it. And yeah, and so in the first line of the song, it says, "Now we rest amongst the rest of these roadside monuments." You see that it's basically the neon resting amongst all these other cars in a junkyard somewhere, with dandelions springing up out of her lifeless, hollowed shell. And it goes on, and kind of has some other imagery. For me, like, kind of telling a vivid story and having a strong narrative is like what I try to strive for on my stronger days. And yeah, I think this song meets that bar for me. Yeah, it turned out great.
Yeah, and it's a fun rocker too, and I love your guys' style. It's kind of reminiscent of the California bands, like you mentioned punk and that kind of thing. It's kind of a mixture of that. To me, it is.
Yeah, for me, like I mean, it's cool to see what everyone else interprets from. Like, oh, that's cool. They're not really picking up on the fact that I was just blatantly, it's a nod to the Replacements, which is like
Right.
Paul Westerberg and the Replacements were one of my all-time favorite bands. I think it's more so, obviously I mentioned California, and there's definitely that. I think the song feels like rolling your windows down and having an anthem on, and that's great. That's what I kind of wanted to feel like, because that's what the song is for me, being out driving in that car, listening to all the songs that I loved. And I can picture so many of them. But yeah, it's coming from a lot of places. For me, my songs are always like try to take all the things I love and make something unique out of it. I guess that's for every songwriter. I was having this discussion yesterday with my friend who runs the studio where I'm finishing the record, and we're talking about bands that sometimes do that and it just sounds derivative, or it sounds I think that's the trickery. If you can write a song where where you're coming from with it, and the things like I know it's a blatantly Replacements, or like kind of some of the like more Americana alt country influenced what, like Lucero or like bands like that. I love that kind of stuff too. And yeah, it's cool if you can do that, but also it doesn't sound like that to other people.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about art, right? Because everybody they have their own experiences, and they kind of, when they're listening to art, or they're seeing art, they kind of come up with their own interpretation. And that's kind of that's kind of the awesome thing about it, right?
I agree 100%. Yeah, I think that, yeah. And also how sometimes maybe there's a record when you're young that doesn't hit you. And then I always try to go back and revisit those things later in life. Like my mom and dad, they had a great palette of music. My mom was really into like the Beatles and all the Motown stuff. My dad loved the Stones, the Doors, Zeppelin, all the like rock and roll. And for me though, at that time, I had my own bands I loved, like in the 70s, it was Kiss. And then I got into everything else after that. But, like the Stones, I never really, because they loved them, I never really gave them a chance until like in the 80s, I didn't like 80s Stones, but then going back and revisiting like those epic records like Exile on Main Street and Sticky Fingers, like, and then seeing them live several times, then I was just like, oh, this is my favorite band. Yeah. So it's great when some things maybe hit you at different times in life that don't, like I fell in love with old jazz only because I got hit by the driver of a high-speed chase. The van got totaled. The new van only had a CD player. And so I just bought a bunch of old jazz CDs like Billie Holiday and Coltrane and Miles. And now I think I listen to more old jazz than I do punk rock. But,
yeah, it's funny because you say that because like I wasn't, when I was growing up as a kid, I was listening to, like 80s rock bands and stuff. I wasn't really listening to Beatles or Zeppelin, but actually as I've gotten older, now I have a much bigger appreciation for what those guys did. And plus you learn the history of how many people they influenced, and then you start hearing that in other people's music. Tell me about your dad, because you did a very unique thing. There's a 7-inch single for Car Song. Tell me about how you approached that and what you did.
Yeah. So I think I was on a flight one time many years ago, and I think I saw something in the In-Flight magazine, at least this is how I recall it, that said like, press a voice recording or a song, into a vinyl with a loved one's ashes. And there was another thing. It was like, you could plant a tree and put your loved one's ashes and then they'll forever live in that. And I got this idea. I was like, you know what? I would love my dad. Well, first off, my father was the biggest supporter of the music always of me creating, but also, he would come to our shows and tape our shows. And I think some of this, and when he would like send some of the VHS tapes out to fans, and he was on like our old message board when we had
that's awesome,
the MySpace, all that. So people knew him. Like he was kind of a figurehead in our little community of the band, and it was really uplifting when I did this release to hear all these stories about him. And so he passed in 2014. So this has been like a long time brewing in my mind. But I just kind of felt like I really wanted to honor him in a way that making him a physical part of the music and he could live on forever. And that to me just made perfect sense. But I knew if I did that, I really, not only, because he passed away due to complications from alcoholism, he got sober, but he this was something that took a toll on him for a lot of his life. But I knew I wanted to, I didn't want to take any profits from it. I would have felt weird doing that. I just wanted it to, for me, it was just a tribute to my dad. But I was like, okay, I'm going to give every cent I make from this vinyl away to some sort of charity that helps kids and families who are also affected by alcoholism addiction and who, need help with like mental health related resources. And so I put all those resources in the vinyl. So people, if they need them, things that have helped me, be different apps and things that you can get, mental health care or, AA, where my dad went to, all those things I think are important. But, that telling his story, there's a nice dedication in the vinyl that talks about all the things he went through. And I just really wanted this to be about a tribute to him. And my friends at the label who put it out, Double Helix, they were able to help me find a pressing plant that understood the intentions behind this and that it was coming from a really great place, because I guess they called several places and they're like, yeah, no, we don't want anything.
Yeah, they're trying to get the grasp it.
Yeah, I totally respect that too. I'd say it's been 99% positive. I saw like 1 or 2 comments like, I don't get this. And so rather than be like, well, hey man, I was like, okay, well, here's the dedication I wrote to my father. I totally respect if you don't understand it, but at least maybe take a second and read this rather than like the sensationalist headline of like, singer presses ashes in vinyl. Because if you don't know the backstory, I was totally understanding, and I expected that there would be a few people that would be like, that's weird. I would think the same thing. But when they know the intention of where it's coming from, I think they'll be like, man, that's really touching. And at least I hope so. I mean, because I know my dad, he wouldn't be caught anywhere without like an Ataris shirt or hat, or that was just his life. And I think some of it was making up for the time he wasn't there in my life. But I think it was just genuinely, seeing the band succeed was like to him, it was like the greatest feeling. And I'm honored that he felt it. And my mom too, she was too. And like I literally just sent her one of the vinyl. We kind of had a tumultuous relationship. She's a strange human like I am, but she's wonderful.
Well, we're all strange in our own way.
Yes, we are. But anyway, yeah. So that's kind of the rough story of the 7-inch of the Car Song 7-inch.
And what a total blessing to have your dad with you in that journey, right? That's really really awesome.
Yeah. Because I mean, I have many friends that, you know, they have the opposite story where they've created really amazing art or music, and then they didn't have the parents that would support them in that. It would just be like, you know, like my best friend. And unfortunately, you know, I think it's one of those stories where a lot of us in life are always kind of vying for the affection or approval of our parents. And, you know, even through the really rocky childhood I had and all I went through, you know, I felt love and I definitely felt approval or felt encouragement and to endow the arts and the things that they saw in me. So, because I wouldn't be the person I was without my mother or father pushing that. I mean, they could have very, you know, when I was doing stupid shit like sneaking out my window at 13 to go see shows one state away with my friends, they were like, more like my mom would be like, Kris, why did you do that? That's her voice, Kris. It's always like this southern weird thing in Indiana. It sounds like a Prius, but it's Kris. It's funny. Anyway, but yeah, you tell when she didn't approve, you know, but she was like, okay, well, don't do that again, because she knew I wasn't out getting wasted. You know, she was.
Yeah, I just love music.
Yeah, I just loved music. So she was like, all right, I'll get behind that. But anyway.
Yeah, I think you know, we have a similar background, by the way, but I think that, you know, turmoil when you're young sometimes makes great artists, because that's a common theme. A lot of the really great artists didn't have the best childhood, so you kind of like, for some reason you figure out a way to like make your own stamp and improve things, and it's also awesome that you're helping you know, support those things that your dad cared about in terms of recovery and all that, because that's super important. Yeah. Tell me about touring, because you guys haven't been touring in a long time. And are you excited? What's your thought of?
Well, I think for the first thing that happened, and I mean, it kind of, the reason I stopped touring, like, well, first off, like I used to tour like 3 months at a pre-2020, I would tour 3 months at a time, go out, get in the van, come home, be home for maybe a month, and then go back out and do it again. And I think when 2020 happened, it broke the cycle of that, because the whole world stopped. Every band I knew stopped touring. And then in March 2020, I got COVID for 6 weeks. Every day was as bad as the first. I ended up in the hospital. My oxygen dropped so low, I nearly died. It was completely traumatizing. And it was really hard for me to like feel like, okay, how am I going to do this again after going through that? Being that, you know, I am constantly around big crowds, and I'm like a very, you know, I'm very mindful of the fact that like, I don't want to go through that again. That was,
yeah. People want to shake, they want to shake your hand. They want to hug you. It's struggling with all that. Cause I have the same thing with that.
Well, cool. Yeah. And that's the thing, because pre-2020, I was the guy who was always out there at the merch table, talking to everybody, meeting every person. But it was like, for me, I'm like, okay, I got to find some way to like do the thing I love, and like be able to get out and continue living in that way, but also do it in a way that feels safe to me and feels comfortable to me. And so I started going out and just doing this thing where I saw a lot of my peers, for the longest time, they were already doing this. They would go out, they would fly out or drive out and play festivals on the weekend, or just do a 3-day weekend shows at like big venues. And I think it was the accident that happened that I never knew I needed to do, because it gave me balance in home life and all this time to write. But not only that, like we went from playing like smaller rooms to suddenly like the room size is like doubled, tripled. So did like, you know, like we were basically, I was making a better living playing a weekend of 3 shows than I was going out playing every night. Because what people don't realize, as much as I loved doing that, like when you constantly over tour or on the road too much, people, you know, sometimes will have that mentality, they were just here, I'll see them next time. Because I do that. You live in like a big city and there's great music every night of the week, you get jaded to it. And yeah, so now it feels like when we play shows, it's shows that actually have intent. Like, you know, we'll do really special things, like an event with 3 other really big bands, we'll play an entire record. Or it's like, you know, it's just us and Sublime, us and like you know, one other larger band we're playing with, us and MXPX. So I think that was the smartest thing I did, and that led to me starting recording the new record, because I finally had time to record and write and like have balance in my just normal person life. So yeah, now I enjoy playing. Now this thing coming up in the UK and Europe, that's the closest thing to a tour, even though it's like a handful of shows. It's literally a consistent bunch of shows. So I'm excited for it. But you know, I mean, this is the first time I've got on a plane since 2019. So for me, it's like, there's a deal of being intrepid. I mean, I got struck by lightning on a flight and the plane like took a 200 feet or nosedive or more. Got a tattoo of it on my arm with my favorite David Bowie quote. Yeah, and so I hated fucking flying before this, but now it's like, all right, now I've got to be around a bunch of germ spreading humans coughing all over me. And
exactly.
But you know what? I take my precautions. I'll get on the flight, and I'll be all right. I mean, I've definitely lived my life to the fullest and travel and do all the things I do. I just do it and take precautions, and yeah. So I'm looking forward to playing the shows and finally getting back overseas. I think it's gonna be great, and yeah, super excited to bring the new music to people abroad. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, doing the festival shows is really fun. Those are my favorite. I'm a bass player as well, but those are my favorite. Yeah. Those are my favorite things because you get to see all your buddies. You get to hang out with, watch the bands. It's like, cause I'm still a fan, just like you are.
Me too. Yeah. Like that's what people don't realize when you play these big festivals, like we're playing Riot Fest and Aftershock and like those type of festivals, you're playing with a bunch of genres you don't normally play with. So like, last time we played Riot Fest, we got to play with Faith No More, like Public Enemy. There was a panel with Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth and Henry Rollins interviewing the West Memphis Three. Like awesome. Waylon Jennings, or it was either Waylon or Merle Haggard played. I was like, this is so cool or like No Doubt played. It was NWA minus Dre and Easy, obviously, but they played Straight Outta Compton. It was so there's indie bands that I love because I'm like a big fan of like The Cure and the Smiths and that world of stuff, and then there's like punk and then there's folk, and I like that because there's such a variety and playing punk rock festivals. It's like, okay, I played with all these bands before. I know these bands. Maybe there'll be a few I want to see, but like. I get excited when it's like stuff outside of our genre because I can nerd out. But like playing with like Iggy Pop, I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome to see those guys are still around, right? That's the music I grew up with, like you say, NWA, all that stuff is still it's still cool.
I'm 48, so like I remember buying all those iconic records. I just listen to everything. To me, a good song is a good song, no matter what walk of life it is. I mean,
exactly.
Taylor Swift writes amazing songs. George Strait writes amazing songs. Tribe Called Quest writes amazing. So there's like, it's all great as long as like it's for me from the heart and coming from a place that's sincere. That's the only thing I like to see in the music I like.
Yeah, authentic, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Can you give some advice? I know it's a big thing to ask in a way, but advice to young artists, like what's some of the things that you learned? And I know obviously too, the music industry has really changed. So just a couple of things that you learned.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try my best. I think the things that probably didn't change are, always follow your initial instincts. I think that when you're that inner voice is speaking to you, like the times when I stray from that and don't listen to it, that's the times when I probably realize I'm on the path I probably shouldn't be upon. That and maybe, as trite as it is, like don't give up, stay at it. And like I feel the way the music is structured now, the industry is structured, probably is a whole different world. I can see, for me, it was like I would save up my allowance, go out and buy a record. I would listen to that one record for days and days, and I'd go on to the next. Now, obviously, you can click a button, discover something overnight. I think that's obviously changed the kind of anticipation that was there in discovering music for some people. And it's a little more expendable, but at the same time, it's giving young people this platform where you can use all these amazing devices that I have no idea how to use, or I'm trying my best in my antiquated mind to learn. But you now have all these ways to like, man, you can have an artist that's breaks amazing on TikTok. Like look at that Benson Boone guy, amazing artist, and like he started out on TikTok. So if you're a punk band today, utilize those things. Why not? There's so many ways to rather than be the get off my lawn person like me, I would say take those things as tools and use them to your full ability. But also, for me, I like to actually record music on analog tape, just like I shoot photos on film, or I did for a long time. And I like to keep the heart in it. So, just as hard as that is nowadays, because I think everybody likes to go in with Pro Tools and like just cut everything up and make it, just keep the heart and the soul in your songs. There is a reason why people want what you create. They can get AI anywhere, maybe using those things to help you if you're like, I need another word for this, like a thesaurus, or, I remember the other day, I only started trying to figure out what ChatGPT can do. I don't use that stuff, but I needed like a list of radio stations in the US that I could like, reach out to them and tell them about the new single. And I just said, ChatGPT, please compile a list of all of the top alternative stations in the United States, starting with populace and listenership. And it's like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, this is amazing. But I would never be like, ChatGPT, write me a song. No. Or,
exactly.
But it's. I'm sure people are going to do that. That's just
they're all just tools. It's like having a different screwdriver or whatever, right?
100%. You get it, and that I hope that other people get it. But yeah, just write your heart, and that's the best thing you can do, I think.
Awesome. Kristopher, tell me how people can contact you and check out the band and all that stuff, all the social media and website.
Yeah, so our website is the atarisband.com, because I think the ataris.com was parked by some person somewhere. And then our social media is just all the Ataris on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X, or whatever the hell it's called nowadays. And the 7-inch, if you want to order it, the label's Double Helix Records. You can find that link on our link in our bio or on the atarisband.com.
Awesome. So everybody, please check out the car song, the new single, and the video, the 7-inch, as you mentioned, and check out the Ataris on tour this summer. It's very exciting.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's super fun talking to you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And it's super awesome.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time, Kristopher.
My pleasure. Have a good one.
All right. You too, man.
Bye-bye.